Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Garden City Zoning Board of Appeals. It's Wednesday, August 24th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. First order of business would, if everyone would rise to say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. Would you take the roll call, please?
Chairperson May.
Here.
Commissioner Price.
Here.
Commissioner Richard. Commissioner Hickman.
Here.
Commissioner Smith. Commissioner Martin. Here. Commissioner Bullock.
Here.
Next order of business is we need approval of the agenda. We need a motion for that.
Motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
Motion's made and seconded. Any comments or corrections? Hearing none, would, oh, come on in. Mr. Richards here.
Apologies.
Accepted.
There's a 13-week-old lab that thinks that her agenda is more important than mine at home.
Okay, would,
For sure.
So the motion on the floor is to approve
Motion.
the agenda.
yeah.
All right.
Would you take the roll, please?
Yep. Commissioner Martin.
Aye.
Commissioner Bullock.
Aye.
Commissioner Hickman. Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
Commissioner Price.
Aye.
Chairperson May.
Aye. Next item is public comment on non-agenda items only. If there's someone here who wishes to speak on an item that's not on the agenda, this is your opportunity to approach the podium and speak on that item. You'll, pardon me? Yeah, okay. Seeing none then, we'll move on to approval of minutes from the regular meeting of 12/8/2021.
Make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we approve the meetings of 12/8/2021.
Second?
Motion's made and seconded. Is there any comments or corrections? Hearing none, would you take the roll, please?
Commissioner Price.
Aye.
Commissioner Hickman. Commissioner Bullock.
Aye.
Commissioner Martin.
Aye.
Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
Chairperson May.
Aye. Okay, first item of business. 29901 Ford Road, consideration of a request for two variances for signage requirements of section 154.606H1. This is a little different than the standard variance in that the signage section has its own requirements for variance approval. So we'll start out with the presentation by our consultant.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
The case tonight is regarding an existing one-story building that is currently being renovated to operate a retail furniture store. And it'll be operated under the name Happy Home Furniture. The owner applied for and did receive a permit for one building-mounted sign on the Brant Avenue elevation and one building-mounted sign on the Ford Road elevation. And each of these were in compliance with the ordinance standards. The owner also applied for two different building-mounted signs on the parking lot or the west elevation of the building. With the if these signs were approved, the proposal for these signs results in the site being in non-compliance with two standards of the zoning ordinance. So the applicant has applied for variances from these standards. Specifically, The zoning ordinance requires that the maximum number of signs per elevation for a building-mounted sign shall be 1. And the applicant is requesting a variance to have that second building-mounted sign on that west elevation. In addition, the ordinance specifically specifies that the total allowable sign area for all building-mounted signs shall not exceed 150 square feet in total. And the total sign area of the 4 building-mounted signs, when added together is 287 square feet. So the applicant is requesting a variance of 137 square feet above the permitted sign area of the zoning ordinance. As Chairman May indicated, a sign variance is different than a typical dimensional variance because there aren't as many, there isn't a need to demonstrate a hardship or a practical difficulty per se. It's more about the impact of the sign with regards to the site and how it could negatively impact the area. And if there's a possibility of having compliance with the ordinance and still meet the intent. So there are several different standards. Sometimes we look at one of the first ones, and actually, several of the first ones are not really applicable to a building-mounted sign. For example, the first is related to obstructions, and it's relating to the fact that the variance is necessary because of required compliance and the construction of a conforming sign would obstruct the vision of motorists or otherwise endanger public health or safety. Given that this is a building-mounted sign, it's not really relevant. Obstruction isn't really relevant because it's not going to be located on the site, like blocking the vision of motorists. So that's not really relevant. Similarly with the visibility, the question is the variance is necessary because ordinance compliance would result in a conforming sign that would block from the site of passing motorists due to existing buildings, trees, or other obstructions. Meaning if the sign was located in such a manner that it could not be seen by motorists. But with this being a building-mounted sign located higher up, we don't appear that the visibility really is an issue with regards to this. And there's another question with regards to sign feature, site features. Whether the variance is necessary because construction of a non-conforming, but because a conforming sign would require significant tree removal or extensive topographic changes. Once again, the sign is being mounted to the building, and whether that signage, so the installation of building signage that conforms or does not conform with the ordinance standards would not require any kind of tree removal or extensive topographic changes, we believe, because of the height of the proposed signage and the fact that we have multiple, throughout the city, we have multiple locations where trees might, in theory, block the visibility, but they're not removed because they can be visible further down the road and that sort of thing. So really this issue with regard to this, it comes down to the issue of scale. The ordinance states that ask if the variance is necessary because the sign exceeds the allowable height or area standards would be more appropriate in scale to the building or site frontage. So when we look at this, the first sign, the chair logo sign, would be positioned in the upper left corner of the west elevation. And then the second sign, which is a channel cut letter sign that says furniture, is going to propose to be located in the upper center of that projected ephes wall. The majority of the facade is brick, but there is an ephes wall that steps in front of and projects from the brick wall, and the channel cut letters will be located in the center of that. And so the submitted renderings that you have in your packet show that the measured sign area of the channel cut letters, they actually use a significant amount of negative space. It's not mounted on as a box sign. It's just using the contrasting colors of the wall to create the effect of visibility. And so it's not using a significant amount of area. And then the channel cut letters, we believe, are proportional to the EVIS wall projection. It's not taking up a large percentage of it. It's pretty much proportional to that EVIS projection. And then one other thing we noted is that the logo sign that's located along a flat surface and it's pretty symmetrical to the fact that there's a on the right side of the elevation, there's a door entrance, and there's another projected ephes portion of the wall. So that kind of gives a good symmetrical balance between the sign location and where the doors are, and that ephes projection. So with that positioning of the proposed signage and the existing features of the wall, we do believe that these, when you look at it, it's pretty much in scale with the rest of the building. It's not massively take up a massive portion of the site. One thing we would note that if the applicant only had signage on this wall, the zoning ordinance would permit building-mounted wall area a total of 187.5 square feet, because we allow 1.5 square feet for each lineal foot of building elevation. When you look at that proportion, the proportion of allowed signage versus the sign area, that's 32%. As he's proposing, the size of the two signs he's proposing result in occupy about 25% of the wall. So in the end, we do think that the proposed sign area and the number of signs does appear in scale with that on the west side elevation, and any lesser amount of sign would not be appropriate in scale or elevation on that portion. Finally, one other standard that seems appropriate is that whether it's the zoning ordinance, the question is asked if the variance shall be the minimum necessary to allow reasonable use, visibility, and readability of the sign. Once again, looking at the size and scale as proposed, we believe that that this area and location is appropriate for the west building elevation, because a smaller sign would be out of scale, really, I think, with the fact that that wall is so large, basically. So based on the size of that wall elevation, based on the standards of the ordinance, and based on what's proposed, we do believe that this signage would satisfy the requirements for the ordinance criteria, and we would recommend that the ZBA grant the variance as requested. So with that, I'll take any questions that any you might have.
What,
Couple questions on this. It looks beautiful on the renderings. The only thing that I was concerned of is there projected lumens and also any flashing coming from the sign? Being in that close of proximity to a stoplight, is it going to be flashing, and how many lumens are going to be projected? I'm not too concerned about the residents. I believe it's Pardo, like First Street south of it. We got a wall blocking that. But any kind of confusion to people approaching the light? I would assume looking at it that there's not, but is that something that we're aware of or that we can be told in the presentation?
In terms of flashing, we do not permit flashing of the lighting at all. So if that was proposed, that would be required to be removed from the installation of the sign. And then in terms of the actual illumination, the lighting of the sign, we can't ask that of the sign applicant and then make sure that it does not exceed a excessive amount. And then in addition, if necessary, you can always request the installation of a dimmer switch to adjust the light intensity of the letters. But I would say generally, at least for the channel cut letters, if they're illuminated, they're pretty attractive and everything. But you're right, if the chair logo sign was a box sign, then that could become an issue.
That's what I would assume. It wasn't noted, so we can make sure before we go forward with it.
Yep. And that's something that could be a condition of an approval and be a requirement of the sign permit.
okay, Mr. Ortega, are you done then?
Yes.
Okay. Next on the agenda would be a presentation by the applicant. Is the applicant present? Would you like to come to the podium and present your feelings about the necessary?
No, everything he said kind of is what.
You agree with him?
Yeah, I agree with him with everything he's saying, yeah.
Okay.
Those signs are
Did
very-
you want to add anything to
No,
that?
they're very necessary for my business. I don't really need it to, and I'm not asking for a large scale of a sign. I'm just asking for it to kind of show at least, which
Mhm.
that's really.
Okay, well, if you have nothing else then, we'll open the public hearing at this time. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on this item?
I came in late, so I didn't hear what you guys were talking about. What parcel were you talking about?
We're talking about the sign on the building at Ford and Brandt, the furniture store. They're asking for 2 variances concerning the size and location of signs on that building. Did you want to say something about it? Okay. Anyone else? All right. Is there any written communications?
We did not receive any written notification or communications regarding the variance request.
Chairman,
Yes.
I did receive a phone call from a neighbor, Mr. Pister, from south of the property, and he did ask some questions about what was proposed, but in the end, he had no objections.
Okay. Well, seeing no more comments, we'll close the public hearing, and at 6:46, and open this to the Cba member discussion. Mr. Bullock, you want to start? You have anything, any comment you'd like to make about?
I think the signage is necessary for the building location myself. That's been a hard building to get people to use, and I think signage would really help. As far as the happy home sign on the end, as long as it's not lit up incredibly and screwing with traffic, you know, with the lights, I have no objection to it.
Okay. Mr. Hickman?
My feelings are similar. I'm okay with everything as long as it will, conform with the lighting regulations of not overly bright.
Okay. Mr. Martin?
I don't have any concerns.
Mr. Price?
Nope, I'm agreeable with everything that they said.
Mr. Richard?
Everything sounds good to me so far.
Okay. Well, I believe, I agree with all of you. I think it meets several of the sections of the ordinance, for the variance standards for signs. It seems to be in scale for the building. The aesthetics are good. It's not overly stylized. And it to me appears to be the minimum necessary to achieve the necessary goals. So if we're all in agreement, if someone would like to make a motion, in that motion we have to state reasons for approval.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance for the signage in due to part that it cosmetically, aesthetically is appealing, but under the condition that we maintain lumens and that it does not become a distraction in the future if we decide to light up that sign later and put something brighter up, because that size of a sign with brighter lights may become a distraction if we can keep that condition to keep it under control and under review. That sounds fair. Okay, so I don't see it becoming an issue, but just to keep that on the record of, we don't want it
Just
to become
So
a
we don't
neon
have an
sign.
excessively bright
Yes.
situation.
Yeah, it's from the rendering, it's beautiful. It's aesthetically pleasing. I think it'll look good there. But in the future, if we change that sign to some giant blue neon, we don't need something distracting people.
Well, I think if they make a substantial change to it, they would need a new permit.
I'll second
Would that
that.
be right, Mr. Ortega?
Yes, that's correct.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Are we talking about both sections?
Yes, both signs.
Okay, so this would include both. Any comments on the motion? Seeing none, would you take the roll?
Commissioner Richard?
Aye.
Commissioner Price?
Aye.
Commissioner Bullock?
Aye.
Commissioner Martin?
Aye.
Commissioner Hickman? Chairperson May.
Aye. Okay, the variance is approved, and you can check with Mr. Ortega about your permits and continuing on with your,
Sorry, I jumped the gun there.
and good luck with your new business.
Looks nice anyway so far.
Okay, the next item of business is at Arcola Avenue and Cherry Hill Road, consideration of a request for 3 variances for dimensional setbacks of the zoning ordinance, Appendix A, Schedule of Regulations. I would like to see us allow the consultant's report and the application, or the applicant's statement to go on, and then we can, as our board members can come in later as shown on the agenda for questions and comments. So, Mr. Ortega, would you like to start us off?
Yes. So this site is an unimproved 0.41 acre lot, vacant lot. The site previously actually had several commercial and residential zoning designations throughout the property, and the applicant applied for a rezoning so that the entire site can be designated as R3 multifamily residential. The majority of the site already was. It's just that there was some portion along Cherry Hill that had remnants of commercial zoning representative of the previous businesses that were located along Cherry Hill. But the applicant did apply for and did receive approval from the City Council in July to rezone the entire piece of property as multifamily residential. The applicant has now submitted a preliminary site plan for a 2.5-story apartment building. Based on the proposed building location, the building is not in compliance with 3 setback requirements of the zoning ordinance. So therefore, the applicant is applying for variances from these 3 standards. And they are the fact that in a required front yard, the setback in the R3 is required to be 30 feet. The applicant is proposing to have the building 27 feet, 4.5 inches from Cherry Hill. So therefore, it's a result is the need for and requesting a variance of 2 feet, 7.5 inches. In addition, the required side yard, there's an error in my review letter here, but because the required side yard setback for a property in the R3 district is actually 20 feet. So he's required to have 20 feet from the north property line. And the applicant is proposing to have the building 17 feet from that north property line, resulting in the need for a 3-foot, or a request for a 3-foot variance. And then finally, the required rear yard setback for property in the R3 district is 35 feet. The applicant is proposing to have the building 0 feet from the east property line. And then the applicant is thus requesting a 35-foot variance from the standards. These standards for this type of dimensional variance are what you typically would consider in terms of the need for the applicant to demonstrate a hardship due to a practical difficulty of compliance with the ordinance standards, meaning that if the applicant were to comply with the current standards, it would the conditions resulting from that compliance would make it unnecessarily difficult for the applicant to develop the property. So compliance with all these setback requirements results in a 35-foot by 130-foot building envelope, but it would be located in the center of the lot. The lot itself is 100 feet wide along Cherry Hill and 180 feet deep from Cherry Hill along Arcola. So when you apply the required setbacks of the ordinance, the issue is that the building would have envelope where he's permitted to develop the building would be located in the exact center of the property. And then that location would prevent, we believe, would prevent the construction of compliant parking lot. So once again, when compliant with the ordinance standards and located in the center of the property, the 30-foot front yard and the 35-foot rear yard would only allow for the construction of parallel parking in that instance. There would only be the ability for the applicant to have 5 parking spaces in the front yard parallel to the building and 5 parking spaces to the rear of the building. So 10 parking spaces would not be in compliance with the building requirements for the proposed 15 apartments. This 2.5-story building, which is in compliance with ordinance standards, could have 15 apartments. Looking at other probabilities of, possibly, for example, reducing the number of apartments, so therefore not needing as many parking spaces, we do believe that configuration is going to result in additional driveway curb cuts that could be required off of Cherry Hill, in addition to requiring multiple curb cuts off of Arcola. And so therefore, this creation, we believe, would create, multiple traffic conflict points. And, it just creates an undesirable situation. So conformance with the setbacks, we believe would create an unsafe and inefficient site design. Ordinance compliance creates a practical difficulty preventing the property owner from developing the property in a safe and more efficient site design. We also look at issues of substantial justice, meaning that if you granted the variances, the applicant would, they're necessary for the applicant to develop the site, and also that granting the variances would not give the applicant any type of advantage above and beyond other property owners in the district that have developed property in a similar manner. So the proposed design would be comparable to other multifamily residential developments we found in the city. And they would not provide the owner with any additional benefits that other owners have in the district, because he's not asking for any type of additional density or additional variances from site improvements. He would be required to provide other requirements of the landscaping and the other site improvements like the dumpster enclosure and all the other requirements of the ordinance. So granting of the variance requested would provide substantial justice both to the applicant by allowing them to develop the property and to make sure that no undue advantage is provided to them versus other property owners. Therefore, they would receive substantial justice. We look at public safety and welfare. So the welfare and safety of the public, we believe, will be secured because the property will be required to comply with the building code standards. In addition, the proposed design results in a safer traffic pattern by means of having one curb cut off of Arcola rather than having potentially multiple locations or another curb cut off of Cherry Hill. So we believe the proposed design results in a safer traffic pattern than one that result from ordinance compliance. We look at certain things like extraordinary circumstances, like whether there's any kind of something special or unique with regards to the site. So the size of the property is somewhat of an exceptional circumstance that results in a need for the variance. Most lots planned and or zoned for multifamily development are large enough to comply with the ordinance requirements. Then they would be capable of accommodating for all the required site improvements and an acceptable configuration that would be efficient. However, the lot size precludes him from creating that in any other configuration than as proposed. And then also, the lot size itself is actually not a self-created situation by the applicant. And we would, note that the applicant has attempted to compensate for the small lot size by having the adjacent vacant land zoned to R3. So rather than develop the site in the R3 footprint of the existing zoning, they've attempted to compensate for that by getting as much land as possible zoned in the R3 district. You have my letter with regards to the other requirement standards of the ordinance. I just wanted to point out these other these highlights with regards to practical difficulties, substantial justice, and the extraordinary circumstances of the site. I guess one other thing I'd like to point out is that, the granting of this, when it comes to the neighborhood character, and the location of this proposed building in relation to the other improvements and uses in the area. We do think that the granting of the requested variance would not substantially alter the character of the neighborhood. The site is directly adjacent to other R3 zone property to the north and commercial uses to the both east, west, and south. And so a multifamily building along Cherry Hill Road, in that proximity to the intersection with Inkster, we do believe is in keeping with the character of that area and that neighborhood. So as I mentioned, you have our other findings of fact with regard to the other standards. I just want to point out the highlights of those that I think are most relevant. And based on the findings of our review, we do believe that we would recommend that the ZBA grant the requested dimensional variances.
Okay. Is the applicant here? Would you care to make your presentation, sir?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Jai, tell us your name and...
My name is Ali Khalaf. I'm representing the owner of the property here. And unfortunately, I don't have much to add what Mr. Ortega said, but we are requesting those rezoning, variances to approach more like safety for the property, as what Mr. Ortega said about if we want to follow the setbacks exactly. It's going to be the building will be in the middle of in the center of the land, and that we would need to open a new curb cut from Cherry Hill to approach the five rear parking lot, because we're going to have 10, 5 in the front and 5 on the back. And by opening a new curb cut, that will, because I have been living in this area for like 9 years now, and I have been seeing every apartment building, they have that opening on Cherry Hill or Inkster. The number of accidents is very high. So we don't want to open anything from Cherry Hill. We just want to go from Arcola, and that will propose these setbacks. That's it.
Okay.
Question.
Did you have anything else to tell us about your property?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment? Or, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. After the presentation for the applicant, we need to open the public hearing and ask if there's any public comments or questions. Yes.
I'm speaking strictly as a resident. I gotta make sure I say that. I disagree with this totally. It's not fair to those residents over there that you're gonna put that many apartments in, only have not enough parking. They're gonna be on the street. It's gonna inconvenience those neighbors. I don't think it's fair to grant to someone to change a variant. We have an ordinance, we have rules. I know we've done it for others. I don't agree with it. There's a reason why we put those ordinances in place. I don't think it's fair to inconvenience people there. I don't think it's fair to change something just for one business, because then you're gonna have all the other businesses that you've told no to for other reasons come in. And I'd ask you to vote no on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to come up and? You need to come up to the podium.
It's 100% me.
So I live,
Could you tell us who you are?
oh, my name is Beverly. Is that all you need to know?
No, your last name?
McCarson.
Okay,
Okay, so I live adjacent to that property there.
okay.
And so my concern is, I'm listening, so when you say 5 spots in the back and 5 spots in the front of the building for his tenants,
Is
No, this
that-
proposed plan wouldn't have any parking in the back. It would all be in the front.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I might have confused you. If he was to comply, if he did not receive the variances and had to comply with the ordinance, he would the only thing he's left available to do is put 5 spaces in the front and 5 in the back. He's proposing to shift the building all the way closer to the Wendy's and on the east of it, and then to have 1 parking lot in the front that would have enough parking to serve all the apartments. So the need for the variance is because right now, technically, the ordinance requires him to put the building 35 feet away from the Wendy's side. When you
So
put the
it-
building in the middle, then there's no other space for parking.
So residents that face Wendy's, which face that field there, will now be facing a parking lot?
That is correct.
No.
There is landscape requirements, but there would be a parking lot in front of the building. You are correct.
If I may, you have without putting too much information out there, an odd numbered address,
Odd
I can
number.
assume?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and not having that entrance off of Cherry Hill, if there's anything approved, that's where the entrances should be, is off Cherry Hill, not off of a side street. There's too many kids that try and ride bikes out. It's already crazy because everybody tries to avoid that light there at Inkster and Cherry Hill. We see it all day long. And I just think if you're adding that much more traffic, it's a hazard. So that's my big concern. So,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Does anyone else wish to come forward and speak on this item? Okay, seeing no one, we'll move on. Is there any written communications concerning this?
The clerk's office didn't receive any written communication on
Did you
extra.
receive anything?
No.
Okay, nothing. Well then, I'll close the public hearing at 7:07, and we'll move on to allow the Cba members discussion and questions. I'd like to start off simply by saying that I think I don't agree with your recommendation. I think it's a really bad idea moving the building all the way back for zero setback in the back, mainly because it eliminates the possibility of any firefighting activity in the back. Firefighters would be unable to reach the back of the building to fight a fire if it was necessary or to rescue people. And I think basically this is a self-created problem because the building is too large for the lot. If it was smaller, the options would open up and we would have more to work with. There is another apartment building just a couple of blocks down Cherry Hill. I believe they have 2 buildings with a total of about 12 units, and they sit on a smaller lot than this. Their lot is 93 feet deep and 165 feet long. So it's considerably smaller than what we're looking at here. And they've been able to put in parking and a building, different variances for setbacks to allow them possibly less frontage to make it more feasible to put something in there. But they have a 180-foot lot, which, if you stack the parking spots, gives you 20 parking spots from one end to the other. With a smaller building, that would certainly be close to adequate. But I'm not in the business of designing apartment buildings. That's up to the applicant. I have another problem with it too. I was looking at the elevations, and by the way, I believe the elevations are labeled improperly. They, but what I believe is the rear elevation, the one facing Wendy's to the east, has a row of windows that would mostly be covered by a 6-foot masonry wall if you had a 0 setback. Doesn't seem like a real good design setup to me. And there's no exit on the back of the building either. There's only an exit on the west-facing side of the building, which also affects fire safety for the occupants. So while you said there were no safety concerns because of the building department didn't require it, but the fire department would find several safety concerns with this building. And I can't approve it myself, but now I'll open it up to the rest of the board. Mr. Price?
Yeah, I was looking at this too, and I agree 100% with you. For one thing, it is up against the wall, and you know, you got business right there, and that's all that traffic there and everything. And they're gonna, and the other thing is, I agree with the lady that the parking out in front area, but you got everybody sort of overlooking something, the disposal area, the trash. They would have that on the north side, which would be right, whoever lives next to them would actually be right off of their front door. You see what I'm saying? So they're going to get all that stench, and not only that, but let's figure it out, man. Apartments, you got more than one person living there. Those trash things overfill, they don't close them, and you get rodents and everything else coming there. So I'm very disagreeable with that. It's telling me that it's a 2.5 story. I have a problem with that when I read this and look at this design, and you're talking about 15 apartments. You know, you're just sort of just icing the cake, you know, a little bit like, oh, it's only 2.5 stories when actually it's 3 stories. Because they got a 3rd floor, plus you got all your maintenance stuff, your air conditioning units, your water heaters and all that. If you're not putting a basement in, which would be another floor, then where's that going? So there's a lot on this that doesn't rattle, it doesn't figure right. And the traffic on that street, and there is a lot of kids on Arcola. And I've seen where they have sidewalk ends and it's just lawn all the way up to the street, which keeps the kids from going there. But if you put that apartment in, you know that's going to go through, and every kid in the world is going to go up the Cherry Hill. And then I wouldn't want to be the people living across the street from the driveway, even though it's going to be, from the way I figured in the center of the thing, it's going to be about the wall where Aaron, or that mechanic place is. So the people, 2 houses on there, are going to have a lot of in and out traffic on lighting and everything through their house during the night. Not to consider the noise of traffic coming in and the addition of the traffic.
Go out to Cherry Hill after they exit onto Arcola. Some of them will go down Arcola.
That's it. That's what I'm saying. So it's a lot of busy activity. You're talking, you know, 15 apartments, and it's not 2.5 stories. I'm sorry. That's just, to me, that's just making it look nice, but in reality, it's not.
Well, that's what the ordinance permits. That's the only issue that, you know, that, because originally the applicant was.
This 2.5 story, the 1st floor, shows to be 10 feet high.
Yeah, that.
So where does that tell me that any of it's subterranean?
I believe one elevation, yeah, they might have been mislabeled them or something, but.
Well, there's a lot of mislabeling on the plans because they're calling this a C1 zoning property on the plan. The elevations are mislabeled, and now we're saying that maybe the numbers are wrong too.
It seems like it's a whole lot of stuff thrown in that aren't actually there.
Well, with regards to those, if there are mislabeled, because there are other issues actually with this plan, with regards to the zoning ordinance. It doesn't show landscaping, it's not in compliance. It doesn't show lighting, it's not in compliance. There are other issues, but this plan isn't intended to be in compliance with the zoning ordinance in front of you. It's intended to just address those issues of the variance, because he will require, like Fred, you mentioned the additional exit for the building, right? It needs, I wouldn't be looking at additional exits from the building, like
Yes.
multiple exit points.
Yeah, and you can't have that when the back is facing the
No.
wall.
No. And so what that would come out during the fire department review, and then they would be required to change the building.
Well, I'm not going to
do it.
approve a variance that sets them up for that problem.
Yep. Why are we trying to change it?
If I may,
Yes, Mr. Richards.
I'm sorry, let me gain my composure here. We are not the fire department. I implore you to find an apartment that has 2 doors, a front and a back door. Egress and entrance, pretty much non-existent. There's a front door. If you look at the plan, I don't care if the wall's 6 inches, 6 feet or not. If there's not a door there, you're not going out at anyhow. That shouldn't be an issue. If it is, Chief Harmon and her crew will let us know when they move forward. I don't think that's something for us to argue about today. The garbage, I would almost guarantee that the dumpster from Wendy's is more of an issue with their grease that they dump in their food than what's going to be coming from residential units. The driveway is going to be, I'm going to assume 5 to 8 feet further than Akron Tire, which is a business, and I would assume they do rather good business. Not everybody's turning on to Cherry Hill. They're going to escape and get out to Inkster. So let's make that argument null and void. Now, to get on to the real questions with the variance, is opposed to all of this, I really appreciated the neighbor's comment, because my big thing is, have we heard anything from 180 or 150 Arcola, which is sitting directly north of the property? So I'm very happy that somebody sitting to the west of the property spoke up, because that was one of my main concerns, is the house next to it. Are they concerned? Going to the children, playing this and that, at 5 feet of a driveway here or a driveway on the other side, we don't shut down Akron Tire, do we? No, the kids are used to traffic. Parking spots, there's 15 apartments, and from the drawings here, I can't say rendering, because this is pretty much just coming from the architect. I can assume from this 29 parking spots, it's almost 2 cars per apartment. I know there's a lot of single-family homes on my street that don't have 2 cars, so even if they have a guest, there's going to be people there. If we make them move that, okay, they're going to have less parking spots. Now people are going to be parking in the street. I would rather have my kid riding her bike or his bike without people parking on the street coming and going. I'd rather have those cars in a parking lot. Now, my serious questions, which I came to the table with on this, excuse me, with the variances, will the 27.4.5 impact any sidewalk use coming forward?
No, because there will be a required sidewalk in the Cherry Hill right-of-way. So that 27 feet is from the right-of-way line.
Okay, on the north property line, we heard nothing from 180 or 150 Arcola opposing any kind of moving closer to their property line?
No.
And 35, which would be 0 feet from Wendy's, it's why I applaud the thoughts of fire department and all that. It's a parking lot. It's not a wooded area. Our fire department can pull into a parking lot and run a hose over a wall. However, are there any kind of communication, industrial, civil, any lines running through that's going to interfere with, that if we have to dig up any of our civil sewers or anything like that are running along that property line with their 3, 6, 8 feet, whatever it may have been at the time they laid it, that's going to be impacted by that if we have to move those apartments in 4 years because we have a water main break?
The site plan currently doesn't show any water mains there now, but if any utility, whether it's sewer, water, even electric, if any of them is located in that area, they would not be permitted to construct in that without getting approval from the authority with granting the easement. And I'm sure we would not grant authority to build over a water main or a sewer.
Right, I was just making sure, this is something, that these were a bunch of questions I had. I didn't get the packet on this property itself, so I came in here, I won't say blind, but with a lot of questions without being able to read recommendations and whatnot. And that was one of my biggest ones, is what's underground? Has Mystic been out? Have we identified anything? Did we do ground penetrating? And what's going on along that property line, because as writtens and as builds change. We've noticed that when we're doing streets and we're doing our own civil work of, well, as built wasn't given to the city, however, we just hit an 18-inch main and now we don't have water and my basement has poo in it. So, but nothing that we're aware of at this time, and they have done ground penetrating and we verified there's nothing there?
Not yet, and that actually brings up a very good question that probably would address some of your other concerns that you've addressed so far, is the fact that, procedurally, everything you addressed with regard to like the fire, water, all those other requirements, like the fact that the elevations do show the wrong height, those are kind of things that will have to be corrected at some point. And it's a matter of whether the applicant is required to make that investment and go and make all the changes of the site plan prior to coming to you, or coming to you first and then going through the rest of the review process. Because all the issues you brought up are very valid, and they are, especially when it comes to the kind of compliance they'll have to do. For example, get back into utilities. Technically, there's an overhead line that looks like it's about 2 to 3 feet away from the building. So I know that DTE, they require at least a 15-foot easement, centered from the line.
I know there's a pole right on the property line.
Exactly, yeah, there's a pole on the property line, so there'd be a lot of other issues. And they would have to contact DTE and determine what's the best way to do that, whether they somehow move the overhead line or bury it or whatever it is. And that's an issue that we wouldn't have any preference of, because we would just say, you have to comply with whatever DTE says. Similarly with the water and utility.
Yeah, moving distribution is
Yeah,
not.
so I just bring those out because, like I said, you guys bring up some valid issues. And those issues, it's a matter of, do we address them? Do we ask the applicant to address them ahead of time, have that investment, and then come to you with the setbacks? Or if you get it denied, or if you deny them, then they have lacked an investment. But it's the chicken or the egg thing, right? Because like if you grant the variances, they could go to planning commission, and planning commission could say, well, no, we don't like this design, you got to change it and everything. So he's gone through this process without effect. So it's the chicken or the egg. But in the end, I would say that your approval, would be, should reflect how you feel the probability that this design could eventually come into full compliance with all the other requirements.
Well, in spite of all those other things, I wouldn't approve it because of the fact that there's no fire department access, and you won't be able to get people out of a building from the back if there's a wall in front of their window.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, that's hearsay. If there's only a wall in front of their window, there's egress for each building, and it's for a reason people aren't expected to climb out windows. There's a door.
In a fire, sometimes people have to climb out windows.
They may have to,
Yes,
but
that's what I'm talking about. That's why they have windows in bedrooms.
We're not the fire department. Just like for a bedroom to be in a basement, you need a stairway.
You need an egress window.
Yes. However, we're not the fire department.
No,
We're not the
but I
planning
talked
commission.
to two of the fire commanders at our fire department about this situation, and both of them thought it was a major problem.
At this point, I would make a motion to table this to afford the gentleman not paying again if we reject it, but to table this until the gentleman and his client go to planning and reach out. And it's another thing with the neighbors. We don't have landscaping. We went through an issue with the gas station up here at Warner Middlebelt where we needed a light screen. You can't tell me that the neighbors are protected. So if I tell you yes today that you can move your building, how do I not know headlights aren't going to keep the neighbors up at midnight? So it's really hard coming into this not knowing all the details. So instead of stating no now, I say we table this and come back to review it until we have all the information in front of us. Because right now it's us voting on, well, maybe. And I feel really bad one way or the other because a lot of the stuff I agree with, but I don't know if I can get behind because I don't know the legalities and where we are. It's our opinion of, is it right, but is it legally right? And if we table it, it affords the applicant time to get their ducks in a row, and it gives us time to review all of the information given, and we can look at it as a total instead of coming back and going through all of this again. So with that being said, I'd like to make a motion to table this until further information is gathered, and we can come back and reconvene on this.
Can I iterate something?
There's a motion to table. We have to act on that now before we move on. If there's no second, then we can continue discussion.
Discussion.
All right.
Okay, the motion fails for lack of support.
All right, right now, the reason I'm saying it, you know, I agree with a lot that he said, and most of it, but I'm still concerned about this 3-story thing. We have nothing in the area. If they cut it down to a 2-story, you know, then, you know, that's conducive to the natural look of the neighborhood, because we don't have 3 stories. And it would just stand out and everything. And I think, and I really have a concern, I know that you said about, you know, about Wendy's having their trash thing and their thing, but that's way in the back of their yard and everything, and the wind blows at that, you know.
That's closer to the residents, though.
But it's in the back. This one would be beside the front of their house.
Right. Wendy's is closer to the residents at 180 and 150 Arcola.
Right, but in the backyard. But in the backyard of their residence.
Do you want a rat in your front yard or your backyard?
No, I
don't want a rat at all.
I don't want to look. I don't want to get out on my porch and sit at night in a nice air and everything and look at Cherry Hill, you know, because traffic. I like to sit out on my porch and look at traffic and stuff because it just, I'm just like that. But when you sit out on your porch and you look to the side and you see a trash thing there, you know, I would like it if they could find a better place for it than next to the person's house.
Okay, well, let's look.
And that's what it would be.
Some of the other members.
It'd be on the north side, right
tell
next
us
to their
how
house
they feel
by this
about it.
line.
Gentlemen? Okay.
Let's see, here's how it is. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Did you have any feelings about this that you'd like to share?
Well, I wanted to hear the further discussion before I would be willing to support the motion to table the project so that we could get some more information, such as the fire concern. But I wanted to make sure that we could hear all the discussion.
Okay.
That's why I didn't want to go through.
Mr. Hickman?
I have concerns on 11 of the 14 criteria, and a few of them have been alleviated. My concerns have been alleviated this evening, but still several remain. So probably the best thing I can support would be to delay it, because I'm not in favor of it as it stands right now.
Okay. Mr. Bullock?
I would go with delaying it too. My issue with it is I believe they're putting too big of a building for the lot size itself. I mean, they could downsize the building a little bit, get rid of some parking spots and give themselves some more space to move things around. The dumpsters don't really concern me, just because Wendy's dumpster's right there. And rats don't care whether if it's front or back. They'll come from the front of the house, they'll come from the back of the house. I run an apartment complex and I deal with it all the time, and I'm hundreds of yards away from a restaurant, so. But that's what my concerns are, is the building is just, I feel it's oversized for the lot.
I believe the building's too big for the lot myself, and unless the applicant wants to move it away from the back lot line, then I wouldn't be in favor of it.
And
But, do we want
When you say back line, are you meaning
the property line
the
between
east
them
line
and
or the
Wendy's?
north line? The
West.
Wendy's line, the east
The
line?
Wendy's line,
Okay.
the east
East side, yeah.
elevation, yeah.
And then I would, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that that's, because they have the building facing Arcola, they're considering that the back.
Okay, I got you.
And I would more consider, instead of being a 3-story, which this is actually going to what is conducive to the neighborhood of a 2-story. So you'd have to redesign the building.
If they do all these things to correct those issues that we're talking about, they're going to have a whole different set of problems. They won't want the same variances that they're asking for now. And I would be willing to look at other variances for this property, but my biggest hangup, and I agree the building is too big, but that mean, and as big as it is, you can't fit in all the parking that you need unless you put it where they want to put it. So it needs to be downsized, moved away from the back, and, well, that's part of downsizing too. I think a two-story would be more appropriate, because right now, we don't know if they're actually talking about a 2.5 or a 3 because of the way the plans look.
You can go over the size and know it's 3.
Yeah. So, I think they need to make a whole new request, basically. In order to do that, we would turn down this and they could come back with a different, or do you want to let them?
At this point, I would make a motion to table this and see what the applicant comes back with. At that time, we can deny it if there's not substantial change and he doesn't satisfy our needs. And at that point, we can address the issues that aren't on this, such as the fire, the height, because height is not mentioned in here, the parking, all of that. And at that time, I wouldn't feel bad about making the applicant reapply and come back, but voting on just what's in front of us, I think there's a lot of what ifs and we're assuming a lot. So at this point, I second to table this, and if they can't appease us when we come back with more information, then we can deny, and they can come back with our suggestions of moving back, lower wall, lower elevation, and all of that, but that's not in front of us right now. And I don't think it's fair to the applicant to vote no on stuff that's not in front of us.
Do you want to make another motion to table to see?
Well, sorry, if I may just point out, Fred, to your question, just real quick. It'd be best either for you to table it and then have the applicant submit a revised application later, or the applicant, in theory, could request that the application be withdrawn. Because if you were, just for your information, if you were to make a motion of denial, then the applicant could not apply for any new variances for 1 year. So then they would not be able to do anything further.
Okay.
So yeah, there's two options. Table.
Would the applicant wish to withdraw the proposal and come back with something different?
Yeah, I would do that
That would be
And
good.
if I may, Mr. Ortega, would we have to stand mute on a vote, or how would we?
How would we address that as far as?
If you,
I guess it probably would still be, I don't know if you'd be required to make a motion to table, or,
I'm just wondering.
We can make a motion to table until such time as the applicant submits
yeah, because you should make
a
some,
revised.
Well, you don't think by him pulling it, that would just automatically have him do it?
Then it's on him and not on us, and I don't want to see somebody have to pay, whether it's $20, $200, $2,000. It's.
well, even if he asked to withdraw it, then that way, in the end, you probably still should make a motion to table, just because the item is up for action on your part.
So we need to make some kind of.
Some kind of motion.
Can I stick on that
Yeah,
second?
go
Then
ahead.
it's there, I motion to table action items until further review and/or applicant withdraws and resubmits.
I second.
Motion's made and seconded. Take the roll, please.
Commissioner Richard?
Aye.
Commissioner Bullock?
Aye.
Commissioner Martin?
Aye.
Commissioner Hickman? Commissioner Price?
Aye.
Chairperson May?
Aye. Your motion is tabled, so waiting on you to come back with a revised application. Okay, thank you for coming in.
And if I may add, take everything to heart that was said at the table today. speak with your client and I come back prepared because there was a lot said and a lot that wasn't provided today that may need to be changed. So to save time and hassle, there's a lot out there, and I agree with probably 80% of what was said, but we can't argue it because it wasn't on today, so please take that advice. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Okay, next order of business is other business and discussion. So, Mr. Hickman, do you have any other business or anything you want to discuss?
I do not.
Okay. Mr. Bullock?
I do not have anything.
Mr. Martin?
Nothing.
Mr. Price?
No, at all.
Richard?
Yes, if anybody's interested, I started shooting a documentary on airplanes, and so far, I've only shot the pilot.
You shot the pilot.
Now I'm all good.
Okay.
I'm calling a board meeting.
Nothing? Mr. Ortega?
Nope, nothing at this time. I guess one question, really sorry about that. It is an issue that because in the zoning ordinance, we don't say whether applicant is required to go to the planning commission first or the ZBA. That's why sometimes I leave it to them, sometimes it seems like they have addressed some issues. And all the issues, once again, the valid issues that you all brought up that need to be addressed, in my mind, I was thinking they would need to address them later on in the process. But I guess my question to you would be, would you like to see something that already has planning commission approval first, then come to you? Or would you like it the
Well, I
other
think
way
that
around?
sometimes alleviates a lot of questions.
Yeah, but then if it goes to the planning commission, then what would you need the ZBA for then? They'd already make the rules.
They can't vary from the ordinance.
The gas station down the street is, zoning said, yes, we need it, yes, it belongs. However, you gotta come before our board because they didn't have the light screen. They had light
so you don't
pollution,
want
there
to
was
jump
noise
it.
pollution. So even though it works, that's when you come to us. I 1000% stand behind going to planning. That way, make sure, okay, you have your trees in line, you have this in line. Yes, the building fits with, imagine if we went to Ms. Dold and said, well, since Mr. Oren moved out, we're gonna put a Rally's right there. Well, it doesn't fit the description. Well, he's got the zoning all good, we're back from the sidewalk. Well, it's not a brownstone. Oh, shit, sorry, we cost you a ton of money. Yeah, going to planning before coming to us is a brilliant idea.
I think that probably settles a lot of issues before they ever get here.
Okay. And just, Mr. Hickman, just to address any concerns you have, whenever either case, whether it's a chicken or the egg first, sorry, I don't know if I included in my review, but I would make recommendations that, like tonight, for them, if you did grant any kind of approval, be contingent upon site plan approval. And so when planning commission sees it, like if they go to planning commission first and then address their issues, planning commission approval will be contingent upon your approval.
Right.
So the planning commission approval, while granting it, the applicant still can't move forward until you make a determination on the variances. So, and that's the whole chicken and egg
Now
thing,
it's the planning
because
commission.
you go through planning commission, address all those issues,
Yeah.
only have the setbacks left, and then come to you, and then if the setbacks get shot down, then he has to go
Back to planning.
back to planning. But in this case, there was no way he was going to get the dimensional variances, and he's got to go back to the drawing board.
So you're saying that if it goes to planning first, and then it comes to us second then, right, or last?
That's the other alternative. In this case, he came to you first, and now...
Well, this did, that's what I'm saying, but I'm saying, if you go to the planning commission, and then they get all their whatever, and then they bring it up to us, and then we have the final say, right?
A lot of our questions.
Or do they just automatically finally say?
The driveway and what it's affecting would be answered there, because they would look at it going, well, no, that doesn't fit the description of what we want as a community.
Right.
And they'll shut them down. But if they give him the go-ahead, or they the go-ahead, then we just say, well, yeah, we'll give you 2 foot, because planning says, yeah, you're gonna work for our city, or you work in the community. We just give them the couple of feet they need.
Well,
Rather than coming to us and wasting time of just, well, It's like the guy that bought the hardware store and then bought the sign and said, well, can I put the sign up? No, you idiot. You
believe
should have
that?
bought the sign before you asked.
Could you believe that?
That's an applicant error.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that they weren't going to just zap the zoning board of appeals and the building, they're just going to make all the decisions and we're just here as a puppet. And I don't want that.
They would approve it contingent on your approval.
Okay.
Like the DDA thing we just went through, right?
Yeah.
The planning commission already made their decision, right? And then they appealed it.
Yeah.
And that one was a little
That
different.
was an
because-
appeal, that's a little different.
Slightly.
That's what I want to make sure, that we're not just a puppet now.
No. And that's the key I wanted to stress, because Mr. Hickman brought that up as well. I was like, no, because their approval is only contingent upon your approval of any variances. 'Cause-
Okay.
And that's the thing, is like, when an applicant needs a variance, they're kind of making they're hopeful that their plan is compliant with enough of the standards, of the 14 standards of approval, that they can get the variances. And so they spend all the money, and you know, that's one of the things, even though I mentioned money is not, economic factors are not supposed to be something that we consider. It's, and not the planning commission either. But they will invest in the plans, they make their plans, and they get all the questions answered. Maybe the planning commission's ask them to deal with DTE and that sort of thing. And then they come in front of you with a plan that they could say is compliance with all the ordinance standards except these 3 variances. So what do you guys think about the variances? So then it's up to you how.
Well, we do the variances, not the planning commission.
Correct. Yeah, you guys always do the like, if for some reason, like I said, if he can't comply with the standards, just
Right.
like fly by the rules, he's asking permission to break the rules. That's what a variance is.
Yeah.
That's an issue. And so,
Seems like those 3 are leading to many more issues.
well, that's the thing, is I think that he could address a lot of those issues further on in the review process. Because, like, for example, he would not get approval from the fire department without an additional access point. Whether he puts it, somehow finds it on the back, whether he puts it on the side, whatever the fire, I don't know the fire code, so whatever the fire department tells me that, okay, what he's proposing is compliant, then at that point, then he'd be okay. But he will be required at some point in time in the process to comply with everything required in the fire code.
Right, which kind of speaks volumes about him coming before us before planning. That applicant had no idea if that building will even fly in the city. So by coming here, I felt it was only fair, hey, this is what we're talking about, let's get over this, because the next hurdle is gonna be a whole lot higher.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, he's got a lot of work to do, I think.
So that's changing now to go to planning
It
first.
just seems too big for
So
us.
they're talking about changing to go
And
to
that's the thing,
planning.
is like, I can't,
'Cause they should,
because
it goes from
technically
us
he
and then
meets
to
the
planning.
density
and
requirements
If
of
you
the
appease
ordinance.
them and you
I can't tell him it's too big, that has to be.
all the measurements and everything.
Well, it's kind of obvious. I mean, you shouldn't have to tell him.
It is. Well, and those are those things too, is like, I can only lead them to the water so much, and before
Yeah.
he thinks it's right. And for example, the fire code, it's a big issue, I would think an architect would know.
Got to get the approval of the building,
But I
and then you got to say if you
Well, I
got the
noticed
room
he
to
didn't
build
use an
it.
architect, he had an engineering
Before you,
firm,
Yeah,
smooth the road.
this way we get all
which
the,
I suppose
all the
is
particulars.
okay,
Yes.
And then
but
we
maybe
can
they don't
do the
have the
variances per
same
se.
training or outlook as an architect might.
Could be.
This poor guy, he probably went crazy.
It's a very challenging site, and I told them that from the get-go, but they want to proceed forward, so.
Yeah,
I think they built it as big as they could to see how much they can get away with.
yeah.
That's what I think.
Well, sure, if they can have more units to rent, they get more money.
Yeah.
If they can get away with it.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay, well,
very
All
nice
in
seeing you
favor?
guys after almost a year again.
yeah,
With that being
all in
said-
favor of adjourning this meeting?
Yeah, can I make a motion to adjourn as long
Yes,
as
you
it's
can.
okay with Mr. Price?
Yes, it is. I second that motion.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting's adjourned.